bring in Nick Wagoner. Nick Wagoner is our guy. He's our ESPN 49ers insider. Nick, we were joking earlier. I was like, man, Nick, it's normally tough to pin Nick down. We realized 49ers don't have practice today. So I guess we caught you on the right day, my man.
Oh, man, see, I was going to say, you guys, I love coming on with you guys, but you guys get a playoff basketball team, and all of a sudden football doesn't even exist anymore, man. Like, I haven't been on in a minute. I think you guys had just dropped your merchandise line at the time I was on last time, and now you're like way deep into it. Like you're like the Versace of radio merchandise.
Well, so. No, he's not wrong. And yes, you're sort of right. When the Kings start to win, nothing else exists.
Nothing else does exist.
Nothing else exists.
Matter of fact, Nick, right now we're going back through the season as we speak.
That's true.
That's what we're doing here in Sacramento. Going back through the season that just happened.
See, you're proving my point. And I'm not taking it personally. I understand, but let's not pretend like I can't talk hoops too now.
Well, let's make this clear. We've got big plans for Nick Wagoner moving forward.
Yes, indeed.
We'll say that.
Yes,
and I'm going to say that remark out loud in case we can't close the deal. Someone's going to pay you. If nothing else, they'll pay you just to not come on with us. We're going to get Nick Wagoner on regularly, man. Believe
That's
that.
Facts.
And we know we could talk. We know we could. Here's a question for you before we get into the 49ers, because I'm sure you're just dying to be asked about the quarterbacks and everything that's been going on in the first couple of days of training camp. I know you're a big hip hop guy. Hip hop celebrates its 50th birthday next Friday. When did you fall in love with hip hop?
Man, I was probably 12-ish. Like I think that I fell in love with hip hop in the middle of like when it first really hit its stride. I'm talking like 92, 93, 94, like right in that range where it was, All Eyes on Me, Ready to Die. Nas and Outkast. Like, I mean, to me, that's the golden era. Like, I'm still stuck in that era, guys. Like, I get, there's like early 2000s. I'm a Jay fan too, and the Kanye, like the initial trilogy from Kanye. Like, I still go back to those. But man, it is not hard to find me on any given Wednesday just listening to early to mid 90s hip hop. So, Ready to Die is the album that really hooked me, if I'm being honest about it. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. I know a lot of people feel that way,
Yeah. I mean, my partner, he says Ready to Die is the greatest hip hop album of all time. Yep. And I agree. I used to say it was the blueprint.
I have trouble arguing, guys. I mean, the original blueprint is right there for me, but it is, I mean, I'm a storytelling guy. Like, that's what I do for a living. And I always say, like, people would say what they want, but hip-hop to me is one of the greatest forms of storytelling there is in the world. I do my own form of storytelling, but I take inspiration legitimately for what I've done for a living from hip-hop. I really do.
Yeah.
Is there, so as we transition from the glorious form of storytelling, you did some great storytelling this week on an episode of the ESPN Daily Podcast and about the 49ers quarterback situation. And it feels clear that that Brock Purdy is the 49ers quarterback week one, unless something goes terribly wrong.
Right.
Is there a possibility Trey Lance isn't on the roster come week one?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, we can't rule that out. And I think, look, there's so many things that are out of the 49ers control as they kind of look at this, but everybody wants to speak in absolutes, right? And I know it's not sexy to sit here and say, let it play out. I get that. That's the line of work that we're in. But it's also the reality, and it's especially the reality with the 49ers. Like, let's just take a walk back through the past 6 years of what they've been through at quarterback. How anyone could sit here and tell you what exactly is going to happen in September, October, November, never mind next week. Like what's going to happen to this team at quarterback? They're just guessing, and there's hope, there's a plan, what they expect to happen, but their plan has been thrown off almost every year since John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have been here in 2017. 2019, the only year they had a starting quarterback that played the entire season, that was Jimmy Garoppolo. They, of course, went to the Super Bowl that year. But every other year, there has been injuries or there's been performance issues. There's been a combination of the two. So, like, trying to sit here and say, like, oh, Trey Lance is most likely to get traded. Well, sure. But here's the thing, guys. There's 4 quarterbacks on the roster. Logic right now tells us a few things. Number one, that Brock Purdy is the projected starter, the guy that they expect to start. He still, by the way, guys, has obstacles to clear, from just a health perspective to make that happen. He's not practicing every day yet. So he still has to do that. There's also a little bit of a mental hurdle that he has to clear of. He hasn't been hit yet, guys, since he got injured. That's another thing that we haven't seen yet. So he's got to do that. Logic also would tell me that the three best quarterbacks out of the four on the roster are Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Sam Darnold. So then logic would also lead you to the conclusion that those are going to be the three quarterbacks on the roster, and Brandon Allen is not going to be. But the other thing that logic would lead you to is that if Brock Purdy is the starter and all four of those guys are not going to be on the roster, what is the best return that they could get for one of the other three guys? And again, logic would tell you that Trey Lance would be the guy who a team would be most likely to give up something to get, only because there's still probably people in this league. There are definitely people in this league that think that they can get the most out of Trey Lance, that can get him to the potential. As I keep saying, guys, that can do for him what the 49ers think they can do for Sam Darnold, which is tap into unrealized potential. So if all of those things are true and we go down the road and there is an injury somewhere else, and that's why I say there's things out of the Niners' control, because there are league dynamics that need to take place for something to happen on that front. If there's a big injury somewhere and there's a team that feels like, hey, you know what, Trey Lance is the best chance to win, or maybe he's a guy who next year gives us the best chance to win, and we think we could get him there, then of course I think a trade has to be something that is considered. Ruling that out would be silly, but I think as we sit here right now, the things that the Niners can't control haven't happened yet to get us to that destination.
Man, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot right there. All right, man. Let me dissect a little bit. So first thing, when training camp started, and people, even before training camp, people try to talk about Sam Darnold and, you know, Kyle really likes him and all this other stuff. I said, you guys need to stop this, okay? Sam Darnold, while I like him more than others, there's no way that I have him as, say, your number 2 quarterback ahead of Trey Lance. But training camp starts and reps are given out and, you know, all these stats and people that are watching it every day. And they're sitting here and they're saying, look, not only is Trey Lance versus Sam Darnold a real competition, but for that backup quarterback spot, it's kind of a 3-player competition, because Brandon Allen is somebody that Kyle Shanahan speaks kind of glowingly of. So the people who are seeing it every day, I'm gonna resort to listening to guys like yourself, Nick, in those situations, because you see it every day. You see the reps, you see the interaction, you see the people that they're playing with. Is this like really a 3-player battle for the second quarterback spot?
I'm not willing to say that. And the reason I think there's a fine line that needs to be drawn here between like, oh, Brandon Allen is competing with Trey Lance and Sam Darnold for the number 2 job, versus like Brandon Allen could be on this roster if something were to happen where there was a trade that the Niners couldn't pass up for Trey Lance or even for Sam Darnold. I don't think that's going to happen. But again, like I said, logically, Lance is the guy who would be the most valuable commodity if another team needed a quarterback. So I do think there's a scenario in which, hey, they would like to see enough of Brandon Allen to feel good that he's their number 3 if another opportunity arose. But I'm not going to sit here and say, I think Brandon Allen is in the mix for the number 2 job. Now, maybe that changes as this offseason goes on. But as we sit here right now, I don't think that's the situation. I don't think that's how the 49ers view it either. I also understand, like, to me, I think the biggest question, and the Niners have kind of answered this, like we've asked them about this, you know, but the question is with Trey Lance, okay, Brock Purdy put together enough on paper to be the starter or the favorite to be the starter going into next year. But then what happened that took Trey Lance from, okay, he's not the starter, but now he's competing, he's singing for a supper to be number 2, right? And so where is that drop off from that to that? And I think, guys, and I've said this repeatedly, and I don't know if people want to hear it or not, but that finger injury that Trey Lance suffered as a rookie, it hampered his development to the point where it not only threw off his rookie season and where he was coming along to the point when he got injured, but it threw off his next offseason, because he taught himself to finish his throws basically with his middle finger instead of his right index finger, which was the broken finger. And, you know, they use the term pronate, basically your ability to kind of follow through or finish. He wasn't able to do that. And it affected all of his mechanics. And so people say, well, why didn't he just go back to his old mechanics once his finger was okay? Well, it's muscle memory, right? So his body now believes that this is a way that I have to perform to be able to throw the ball. So not just learning relearning what he did before. It's unlearning the thing that he taught himself just to get through his rookie season. So then he gets hurt again with the ankle injury, and now you've got 2 seasons by the wayside. And all of that takes you to where we are right now, where in some ways he's essentially starting from scratch because the Niners almost have to look at him as a different player or as a player that was like he was when he was a rookie because he simply hasn't been able to get the snaps they would have liked him to get, especially last regular season when he hurt the ankle. So I know these are long-winded answers, guys, but there's so much context and nuance to all of this. Make sure people understand that there's so many things at play here, and also that people understand that yes, it is. There's a path that the Niners want to follow here, but sitting here and saying like this is definitely what's going to happen, I'm not going to do that, guys. I'm not going to speak in absolutes on something that has had no absolutes other than uncertainty for the last 6 years.
Steeler 1KC on KIFM West Sacramento 98.5 FM KRX QHD2 Sacramento ESPN 1320. Always live on the free Odyssey app. Nick Wagoner, ESPN, joins us. Nick, we were having a discussion earlier about the offensive line. How much of a concern is that for the San Francisco 49ers headed into week 1 against TJ Watt?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost hard to separate it from the quarterback discussion, right? Because of what we've seen with the injuries and things like that. But to me, aside from quarterback, the biggest question mark they have is going into the season from a roster standpoint is that offensive line. And, if you go back and look at, last year they had 3 new starters on the interior, and we all said that's a big question mark, right? Well, they go into the season, and those 3 guys all played pretty well, right? Like they made it through the season. They played well. And certainly the 49ers, were the number 2 seed, won 13 games, went to the NFC Championship, all that stuff. But to me, guys, when you're having a conversation about the 49ers offensive line, it's not like, are they good enough to win a bunch of games? It's, are they good enough to win a Super Bowl? That's the question you're asking about everything the 49ers are doing right now. And if you go back to the Niners' last 3 postseason losses, so Kansas City Super Bowl, Rams NFC Championship game, Eagles NFC Championship game, I would argue that their inability to consistently block in those 3 games, now obviously one of those was a backup tight end that got Brock Purdy hurt, but it was going to be an issue all day, guys. That was a fierce pass rush that the Eagles had. But Aaron Donald the year before took over that game in the 4th quarter of the NFC Championship game and helped the Rams win. And I still argue, guys, I'll argue this to the death, that Chris Jones should have been the MVP of that Super Bowl because I thought he completely took over that game and dominated Mike Person, who was the team's starting right guard at that time, to help the Chiefs win that game. So that's what I'm saying, where it's like, okay, they have guys that they feel good about and can get them through the season, but can they step up on the biggest stage when the pass rushers on the other side are those elite level guys? And as I look at it now, you've still got Aaron Banks, like I said, played well last year. Jake Brendel played well. Spencer Burford, he was okay. He was in a rotation most of last year at right guard. So can he take that next step forward? And so far, to his credit, guys, I think he looks better. He's anchoring better. He's a little stronger. I think he looks like he's poised to be better than he was last year. But then you have a question at right tackle. And people could say what they want about Mike McGlinchey, but he was one of the best run blockers in the league. And yeah, the low lights were bad, but for the most part, pretty solid out there at right tackle. He wouldn't have got paid $18 million a year if he wasn't. And Colton McKivitz, who, hasn't played a ton of games, particularly at right tackle, has to step in there too. So to me, that is the single biggest question, is not just, is this group good enough to get through the regular season? Because I think it is. And that's assuming health, of course. Trent Williams, they have to have maybe the most indispensable player on the entire roster with the, Nick Bosa, you could argue, I guess, supposed to. But that to me is the big thing, is are they good enough to win in January and February when it counts most?
Yeah, and McKivitz, the general consensus that I hear, because I have the same worry. I know McGlinchey, like you said it perfectly. When it was bad, it was bad. But I mean, in reality, that was like once every 2 weeks. Like you see this awful, you see this awful highlight that circulates on Twitter. But there's 50 other plays in between there where he's just fine and you never notice him. So McKivitz, the consensus seems to be he's maybe better at pass protection, but he's going to be a drop off in the run game. Is that kind of what's been talked about with him right now, replacing McGlinchey?
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the expectation is, the hope is that he can be as good or better at pass pro, and then the run game, he'll probably be a drop off, which, to be fair, McGlinchey has been a top 5 run blocker at tackle for years now. So, that's a high standard to meet. But again, like if you go and look at it, Colton McKivitz has not played a lot of football in the league, and particularly at tackle. I think he has 2 starts at tackle. One of them was at left tackle, and that was that Week 18 game. If you remember, guys, down in LA against the Rams, a game they had to have. They make the big comeback and they win the game to get in the playoffs, the 2021 playoffs. And he played pretty well. Trent Williams was injured. He played pretty well. He held up over the course of the game. And okay, but that's like still super small sample. And they have a great offensive line coach, Chris Mercer, one of the best in the league. He gets a lot out of these guys. But the Niners have clearly made the decision that they're going to invest in the skill positions. They have their left tackle who they've invested heavily in, but the rest of that line has been pieced together through various other avenues. And so, yeah, there's no denying that Colton McKivitz is going to have some rough moments. It's the question of, again, can he be consistent enough to get them where they want to go, particularly when the competition gets tougher.
Nick, we close to a Bosa extension?
Man, I thought we were close like 2 weeks ago. So I've been told it was going to be any day, and this was like a week ago. So I think it's going to happen. It's never been a question of if they're going to make him the highest paid defensive player in the league. It's just been a matter of when and by how much, right? So I think this will get done. Do I think the Niners are worried about it right now? No, I don't. But I think there is probably a time where you start getting into you start getting that second preseason game right around there where you're 3 weeks from the regular season starting. Like, even as great as Nick Bosa is and as good as he takes care of himself and all that stuff, you still got to, what they call callus up, callus up and get your wind, football shape, all that stuff back. So he is going to still need a little bit of time, but I think this is going to get done. I don't think we're at a point yet where we have to worry. But like I said, if we start getting into that, he hasn't reported in there in the week of that third preseason game, then I think maybe you start saying, okay, what's going on here?
Nick, we talk about the things that we're concerned about, just because, those are the stories, and, you got to be, you got to look at this team as like, okay, where are some of the things where they can improve and things of that nature. So we talk about the offensive line. We talk about the questions with the quarterback and what's going to happen there. But you've seen this team for a week plus now. These guys are stacked. Like, this roster is crazy. The defense is going to be crazy. The skill position players on the offensive end are damn near, I don't want to use this word. Last time this happened in the NFL, it went all bad, but I was going to say a dream team type situation. This roster is –
I'm down, Vince Young.
This roster is stacked outside of maybe those 2 questions.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's funny. Our mutual friend Kyle Madsen last night was asking something like he was writing some piece like who's up and who, like, stock up and stock down. And he was like having trouble coming up with stock down. He was asking me, and I was like, man, I can give you a couple of things, but I don't know if it's anybody that really matters. Like, I don't know if it's anybody who's going to be playing significant snaps for the 49ers this year. Yeah, if you look at every level of their team, there's like an all-pro or a Pro Bowl level player. And in some places there's multiple, right? And like, I just, I'll throw out an example of where I think they can be stronger, which is the defensive line. And if you just follow me, guys, like 2019, that was the engine that made it all go, right? The defensive line. And they had DeForest Buckner and they had Eric Armstead, and they were able to, on third downs, kick Armstead inside. So it was Armstead and Buckner next to each other, and then Bosa and D Ford rushing from the outside. And I think their D-line has still been very good the last few years, don't get me wrong, but they would be the first to tell you, the 49ers would, that they were not at the level that they were in 2019, and that is that dominant, just take over a game, quarterbacks going into a shell within the, in the middle of the first quarter type of group. They haven't been that. I think they have a chance to get back there because I think Javon Hargrave is the real deal, and I haven't had a chance. I've watched plenty of them on tape over the years and things like that, but getting a chance to see him in person, you really understand that this is a unique football player because he's explosive, he's powerful, he's all those things, but he's all of those things, like, from a stature standpoint, where he is underneath your pad level at the snap. Like, he's kind of stocky, right? He's not the big, tall, like DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead with the Twin Towers. Well, now you've got a guy who's a little bit more of a compliment. He's not similar to Armstead, he's a compliment. And so I think Hargrave has a chance to raise all ships again, where now Nick Bosa is even getting a few more one-on-ones. Eric Armstead is benefiting. Whoever is lining up at the other defensive end, definitely going to get plenty of one-on-one opportunities. They hope it's Drake Jackson. We'll see if he gets there. He's done a lot of work, and you still need to see it translate onto the field. But I think, to me, like, those are the things where it's like, yes, this is a really good team. They have a chance to be an excellent team, a Super Bowl team, but can they make those kind of incremental improvements in all these different spots that get them over the hump?
Nick, always a pleasure, man. We're looking forward to talking to you a lot this season.
We gotta get Nick here for a Kings game too, man.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta come to the Golden One Center, man. You gotta pull up on us, Nick.
We got,
I definitely will. I've been there one time. I drove up a few years ago because I wanted to see Giannis, right? I'm a big fan of just going to see when the stars come to town, and it was cheaper to go up there, of course, than it was here in Golden State. So I drove up there, and he had food poisoning or something. He only played 15 minutes.
Oh no!
So I like the Golden One Center though, but I got to get back up there for a better experience for sure.
I was just thinking we got to get Nick out here for the YG concert. And it dawned on me. He's going to be busy that day. It's the home opener for the 49ers. You're going to be occupied the night of the YG concert. We'll figure out a good time to get you out here. We'll start getting you on the video stream as well when you're free. But again, Nick, always a pleasure, man. Thanks for carving out some time for us.
Sounds good, guys. Catch up soon for sure.
Yes, sir.
That's our man, Nick Wagoner, right there.